Harshika, do you want to take it forward?
Hi, yeah, Megha, definitely. Do we have Vibhor already join us? We do, right? Okay, perfect. All right. All right, guys. So next on our list, the next speaker on our list is someone who has a YouTube channel, and personally going through that, it more of acted as a beacon of light for me at least, and I'm sure it will be for a lot of us on this forum. It answers fundamental questions like, how do you identify an MVP, or, how do you create a product backlog, or how do you prioritize it? Well, in this session, you'll hear him share his thoughts and experience about agile transformation, agile coaching, leadership skills, high performance teams. Well, the list keeps going on and on and on. He's someone who is an agile and leadership coach. He's based out of Toronto, Canada. I think rightly pointed out by someone. Definitely not a great time for him. But then thanks so much, Vibhor, for taking time out and managing this for us and helping us and being part of this entire session. Then he's someone who's embarked on this journey to help executives and organizations attain business agility. He has a vast experience in coaching, and today he will share a few elements of his secret sauce, those fundamental lessons that helped him succeed as a leader. Guys, please help me in welcoming Vibhor Chandel. Vibhor, over to you. If you could share your screen as well, please.
Vibhor, we are not able to hear you if you're talking.
Yeah. Okay, I think he's plugging in his microphone.
Sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Loud and clear.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Harshika. I really appreciate that. And actually, I wanted, before I begin, I heard Rakesh saying something about Suits, where it got filmed. Rakesh, actually, Suits got filmed in Toronto because of the tax credits. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that, because, that is something that, we in Canada are really proud of, because Suits is one of those shows that actually gave me a lot of ideas, during Agile Transformation. So with that, let me actually share my screen and see if you all can actually. I do not have a fancy deck as I have seen other people using. I just created something. So deck is not going to be something that is my strength. My strength is going to be storytelling. So just give me 1 second.
I'm sure people are looking forward to it, as is before. A lot of people pointed out they're not looking at slides. More interested in this presenter talking. Good.
All right. So can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
The deck? Okay. All right. Thank you, Harshika. I appreciate the introduction. That was actually a really good introduction. I want to start by thanking you and your entire team, especially Dinesh and Sanjay, for inviting me to Scrum Day India and providing me the opportunity to speak in front of one of the most energetic crowds that I have seen. I'm truly, truly grateful. So one thing I want to point out, my camera is here and you guys are here. So I'll be seeing on my computer screen over here. So please don't mind why I'm not looking you directly in the eyes. Well, I will be here and then I will actually switch. So when Dinesh actually asked me to provide the title of my talk, I had no clue, no idea what I should be speaking on. I sent him a random title, a three lesson I learned as an Agile coach, hoping to find at least 3 from a number of stories I gathered during my journey towards agility. Dinesh, however, didn't like the title. I don't know. I didn't see him in the crowd over here. So hi, Dinesh. I hope you're here. So he didn't like the title, and so after a few back and forth, we agreed on a title which is the focus of my talk today: the fundamental lessons that helped me to become the leader I am today. And I'm glad we removed the number 3, because today I will share 4 lessons instead of 3. All right, so I have 45 minutes allotted to me. I have already wasted like a few minutes, so I apologize in advance if I go a little over or finish before time, because I have no idea how long it's going to take. I speak a little fast, so if you have trouble listening, just point it out and I will try to go a little slower. All right. So it's 3:30 in the morning, or it's 3:48 in the morning here in Toronto. So if you hear someone snoring, just call out my name and I'll wake up. I am generally a night owl, but this is really past my limit. I usually sleep at 2 a.m. most of the time. You know, when I was little, my dadaji, my grandfather, used to tell me, and I'm pretty sure you all must have heard this saying: early to bed, early to rise makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise. My grandfather had a great influence on my life. Now, he used to read me shlokas from Bhagavad Gita. Now, before I begin, here's a disclaimer that I'm not an expert on the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. I heard my grandfather reading it multiple times when I was little. And when you read or hear something over and over, you start to understand or interpret the meaning behind the seemingly complex words. One such shloka that stood out for me was this: Yad yadacharati, please forgive me if I do not pronounce it correctly. Yad yadacharati shreshta tat devetro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokast danu vartate. Now, if you understand the meaning of this shloka, it is such a beautiful shloka. It describes the essence of leadership in just 2 lines. It says yad yad and tat tat, meaning as they will see, so they will do. Now, I have seen this happening all the time in the corporate space. People follow the actions of a leader, not the leader's words. People don't do what they're asked to do. They do what they see their leaders doing. Now, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King are great examples of such leaders. But let's not talk about my experience. Let's talk about your experience. When companies start on their Agile journey, they hire Agile coaches and ask them to tell their people to act in Agile ways. This telling people to behave in a certain way causes resistance. Now, I have talked about resistance a few times already in my videos about how to go about handling resistance to Agile transformation. One such way is to ask the leadership, the executive leadership, to adopt Agile first before asking people at the lower level. When followers witness their leaders behaving in a certain way, then we don't have to force action. Action happens automatically. And this is the first lesson of today's talk that I learned from my grandfather. Leadership is not best when it is taught, it's best when it is caught. Kind of rhymey as well, so it is easy for you to remember. Moving forward. Now, before I move on to lesson number 2, I need to provide a brief background about who I am and what I do and where I'm from, where I came from. I'll try to be as short and brief as I can while I describe myself. So for those who don't know me, my name is Vibhor Chandel. I am an executive Agile and leadership coach, currently working as a director for Agile Transformation in one of the financial institutions here in Canada. I completed my preliminary education in India before moving to the United Kingdom for higher studies. I then came to Canada about 17 years ago, and here I started my career journey as a Java developer. Later circumstances led me to assume the role of a Scrum Master, and then I transitioned into being an Agile coach and finally a coach for other Agile coaches and executive leaders. I'm also a certified life coach, if you guys don't know that. I've worked in all sort of companies, including startups, where the product line is more evolutionary in nature, to regulated industries like finance and government. So I think it is safe for me to say that I've been through the entire spectrum of uncertainty and worked with all kinds of people, from haters of Agile to lovers of agility. Now, it's been a roller coaster ride for me in the literal sense. And when I looked back and reflected on the journey, I was able to, as Steve Jobs famously said in one of his speeches, I was able to connect the dots. I could see why certain organizations behave in a certain way. And when they are, behave in a certain way when they're first introduced to Agile. This revelation, this knowledge that I gathered was not the result of my deep understanding of the Agile Manifesto's values and principles, unfortunately. It was the result of hammering the nail over and over and over again, with me being the nail and the uncertainty being the hammer. Now, getting back to the topic, the reason why I described my background is because it is relevant to the second lesson I learned on leadership, which is human beings learn in 3 stages. It'll make more sense if I describe this one incident of my life, the next story. So it goes back 21 years when I first landed in London, UK as a computer science student at the University of Derby. My parents gave me a cell phone and a contact number of a person to help me get settled in the city of Derby. Now, at that time, the cell phones were not that advanced. We could barely make phone calls, let alone use Google Maps to find our ways. Now, since there was no Google Map on the phone, and also because I was told, I called this guy, this old family friend who was supposed to help me. I called him and asked him, how can I get from the airport to the hotel? Now, he said, dude, that's easy. There are 5 different ways to get to the hotel. And he told me all 5 ways. Now, he sounded really friendly, and I'm pretty sure that's what he thought about himself as well. But actually, he made it more difficult for me. I was confused like anything about which way to take. I just wanted to know the easiest way to get to the hotel. So what would actually have helped me was to, instead of giving me 5 different ways, if he gave me one way, one set of specific directions to follow, or even better, if he could come and pick me up from the airport and showed me how to catch a taxi or the underground train and showed me the traffic rules to navigate around the city, that would have helped. Not only would that have helped in learning how to navigate, but it would have helped me build the confidence required to survive a new city. Anyway, that was the first day in London. I somehow found my way to the hotel. I later found a rental apartment in Derby as well and got settled. 6 months later, I was a frequent visitor to India, and I knew all the 5 different routes from the Heathrow airport to my rental apartment in Derby. 6 months was enough time for me to understand when to use which route. So if I was coming in the morning, I used to take route A. In the evening, I used to take route B. And if there was traffic, I used to take route C. I started to understand when to switch between these different routes and why. Couple more years in the mix, I got myself familiar with the way traffic works in the UK. I got myself a second-hand car as well, and I used to just drive without planning my journey beforehand, as I used to do earlier. There was still no GPS. If there was traffic, I just used to take the next exit, go through the roads I never took before, driving almost effortlessly, navigating those unknown constraints to reach my destination. In the process, I even actually invented a few new routes without even thinking about it. Now, if you look closely, my journey towards becoming an expert navigator on the streets of the UK actually followed a specific pattern, the model which we all call Shu-Ha and Ree, which describes how a human being learns something new. According to Shu-Ha Ree, we first follow rules. We follow one way of doing things over and over again without questioning the process. We then discover other ways of doing things, and switch between these different ways as and when needed. In the end, we achieve some kind of a flow state where we are not bound by any one of a particular way of doing things. And in the process, we usually end up defining new ways of doing things as well. Now, this final state, the state of flow that we experience in the end, is what I call the state of agility. All right, so this is actually too much information in one go. Let me just take a sip of water. Now, I'm pretty sure that if the flow state is a form of agility for many of us as agile coaches, scrum masters, and others. But this is something what defines what actual agility is for me. I mean, agility is not the values and principles as mentioned in the Agile Manifesto, for me at least. There are only a handful of companies in the entire world that can claim to be in this state. People say they are doing Scrum or Safe or Less or whatnot, but those are just different ways of doing stuff that other people have defined for them. Just like 5 different routes my friend gave me when I first landed in UK. Now, I'm not saying that these ways, these frameworks are not important. These are important to pass through the stages of shu and ha. But in order to reach re, we will have to dissolve the walls, the boundaries created by these ways. Now, this was the second lesson. This was my introduction to the psychology behind how learning happens. This understanding about how human beings learn and master skills is actually misunderstood in the corporate community. When I talk to executives about shu, ha, re, the first reaction that I get is re is a difficult state to be in, to achieve, and that the state of ha is good enough for their purposes. They want to forever dwell in the comfort zone that the ha state provides. Now, but what they don't understand is that these stages, the shu, the ha, and the re, are not mutually exclusive. These stages do not come in separate packages where you can pick and choose which stage you want your team to be in. Shu, ha, re comes in a single package, where the lower stage inevitably, after a certain period of time, leads to the higher stage. You can't stop the team from growing into the higher stage. You can't make the team to forever stay in the ha stage. And the reason for that is, over time, the circumstances, the situations, the kind of impediments that the team face evolve with the ever-evolving technology. So becoming static and not evolving into re causes bigger problems for the companies. Now, let me explain this with yet another example from our scriptures. Now, I may be sounding a little esoteric at this point, but since the event is based in India, I think it'll make more sense once I'm done. Now, I'm going to talk about the leadership styles of 2 of the most popular kings in the history of India, Lord Rama and Lord Krishna. I will talk about why their leadership styles differ, what was the reason behind Rama being a leader who was always by the book, whereas Krishna, on the other hand, ruled with agility, with wit. Why was that the case? Very few people actually talked about it, and it turned out that the reason was the evolutionary nature of the way people and society learn different things. It is said that Rama born about 100,000 years before Krishna. Please don't count me on it though. At that time, Rama's country was going through a transformation, just like Agile Transformation, where one of the first goals is to help the company adopt agile practices. Similarly, to transform his country, Rama's first goal was to establish law and order. Before Rama's time, there was no described law in the country. So one important dimension of his life was that he wanted to bring order and civilization to his country. He therefore created rules for everyone to follow. And since he was a superb leader, he didn't just expect his people to follow those rules. He himself followed those rules by the book as well. He led by example, as they say. He was so strict in following those rules that at one point he had to banish his wife the second time to the forest, the wife that he dearly, dearly loved. This was the shoe stage in the timeline from Rama to Krishna, a stage where everyone followed rules in an effort to transform the country towards becoming a law-abiding civilization. By the time Krishna came, thousands of years have passed. Civilization was established. They were well-established kingdoms. There were rules to live life, do business, fighting wars. Everything was well documented. This was the Ha stage where people had multiple options. They had freedom to choose between different ways of doing things. This freedom, although really good, allowed some people to subvert the law. These people used the loopholes to create impediments that were uncertain and complex in nature. To resolve these impediments, Krishna had no other way, had no choice but to use his wits. In other words, he had to be agile. This was the re stage. Okay, so this was Shuhari. This lesson showed me then when it comes to making a society or a group of people learn something, the stages of Shuhari are inevitable, meaning that you can't willingly skip stages, neither can you stop or pause the natural progression of these stages. This knowledge changes the way we look at the role of an agile coach. And that was my third lesson. The role of an agile coach is not just coaching. If learning new practices follow three different stages, the role of an agile coach, who is supposed to transform the organization from the ground up, cannot be just coaching. The role of an agile coach evolves as the organization progresses from adopting agile practices to becoming agile. To understand this better, let's have a look at this diagram right here, which explains the different roles a coach plays in three simple quadrants. We will ignore the first quadrant, which is managing, because as we all know, in agile coaching lifecycle, the role of managing people doesn't exist. I created this diagram to help executives transform from their role of a manager to that of a coach, and that's the reason why I have it here. So let's start with mentoring. When we first start the agile transformation, there is a skill deficit. There is a need to learn agile values, agile principles, and the different kinds of agile frameworks. This is the shoe stage where people learn different frameworks and then use those frameworks, diligently following the rules prescribed in those frameworks. At this point, agile coach is actually a mentor. Next role in the queue is counseling. Once there is no more skill deficit, when people know what the framework is all about, and once they start following the framework by the book, the agile coach assumes the role of a counselor. As a counselor, the agile coach asks the team about the problems and provides suggestions, recommendations, or different options that are available to the team to solve those problems. This is the Ha stage where people learn different ways of doing things. But this is where teams get stuck. And this is the role most agile coaches are expected to play, the role of a counselor. The magic happens when the team, with the help of experience, time, and discipline, enters into the re stage. When the team enters the re stage, the agile coach has no other option but to play the role of a coach. As a coach, the agile coach is required to ask solution-oriented questions, open-ended questions. For example, what do you think we can do to remove the defect? Or what do you think is the solution? As agile coaches, we assume that the team has the solution already. All we have to do is help the team dig up those solutions by asking questions. So an agile coach is never just a coach. The journey towards playing the role of an agile coach actually starts by first playing the role of a mentor, then a counselor, and then a coach. Let's talk about the fourth lesson, which is feelings are the best persuaders. Now, I will try to be quick on this lesson as I don't want to go over my allotted time. I hope, Harshika, you are keeping me honest with the time. I have no idea how much time I've got left.
Yes, yes.
All right. So, okay. So the story goes like this. I am a storyteller, so I'm going to tell you another story. It was the time when I was a Scrum Master. I joined this new team, which I was supposed to help ramp up using Scrum. As with all the new teams, I was trying to teach them the basics of Scrum, holding them accountable to diligently attend all the events prescribed in the Scrum Guide. Things were going very smooth. People were attending all the events and were getting into the habit of collaborating and working together as a team. But then, except for this one person who was always late to stand-ups. Now, I'm pretty sure you all must have had similar experiences in your careers as Scrum Master as well. So in the beginning, I just ignored what was going on, thinking that things will fall in place over time. Agile was a new way of working for everyone. So I wanted to give everyone a fair amount of time and space to adjust. Patience, as they say, is one of the super qualities of a good Scrum Master. Or is it? I'll leave that for you to decide. Okay, months went by, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. The guy was still coming late. At that point, I decided to take it head on. I decided to do that shall not be done. I decided to confront. Well, you have to realize that I was still a new Scrum Master. What could you expect, right? In a one-on-one setup, I asked him why he was always late. The reasons he gave me were straight out of the Google search for the phrase 10 best excuses to make, when you're late to work. Reasons like, he couldn't wake up early, he was stuck in traffic, etc. Those reasons were not good enough for me to reschedule the events and disrupt the discipline and the habit the rest of the team was already going through. So like a good Scrum Master, I explained to him how his coming late and skipping events was setting a bad example for everyone else in the team. Now, it did work. He started to come on time and started to attend all the meetings and events, but only for the first 2 sprints. In the 3rd sprint, he was back to his old self. He started coming late to stand-ups and started to skip meetings all over again. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this was frustrating for me like anything. I took the problem to a senior Agile coach who was also my mentor at that time. He said, Vibhor, as Agile coaches and Scrum Masters, the greatest weapon that we have, the greatest tool that we have is emotional intelligence. But hold on, isn't emotional intelligence all about empathizing with other people? How was that going to help me in this case? There was nothing to empathize on. The guy was just, for the lack of better words, lazy. The Agile coach then explained that he was not going to ask me to empathize. That's one side of the coin. Empathizing works, but only with the right people. He wanted me to reverse engineer emotional intelligence and bring feelings and emotions to the mix. He taught me how to confront someone in a one-on-one setup more effectively. It requires a little bit of practice and preparation, though. You can't just wing it. You need to prepare your confrontation pitch, if I may. And the pitch consists of 3 main ingredients: feelings, behaviors, and impacts. Let me repeat. The 3 main ingredients to confront someone effectively are feelings, behaviors, and impacts. Now, in your pitch, you have to say specifically how you feel. You have to say specifically the behavior they did that caused that feeling. And then in the end, you have to say the impact of the behavior on you and others. These 3 ingredients, feelings, behaviors, and impacts, can be in any order, but they all need to be there in order for your confrontation pitch to work. Here's an example of the pitch that I used while confronting the team member who was coming in late. In a one-on-one setup, I said, when you showed up late to the stand-up on Wednesday last week, now remember, you have to be specific, say when it happened. So when you showed up late to the stand-up on Wednesday last week, I felt very disconnected from you. And my concern is that if you continue to show up late to the meetings, that this condition, this disconnection will grow to the point where I will stop trusting you. And this is it. This was the pitch. And, I am happy to report that this way of confronting actually worked for good. And actually started to come in on time mostly. Now, I'm not saying it works 100%, but it works, at least 80% of the time. All right, so with these lessons, there are more, but these were the main ones that helped me become the leader that I am today. Hope you guys had fun. Thank you for having me. Over to you, Harshika.
Thank you, Vibhor. Thank you so much. I really did not even need to give you a time check. Really appreciate that. All right, guys, we will open for questions. Okay, I see Payal raising her hand. Payal, if you could unmute yourself and ask a question, please.
Sure, thanks a lot. So thanks, Vibhor, for the wonderful session. One question here. So as you mentioned about the feeling and the impact, right? Prepare your elevator pitch. So this was a nice example, maybe the latest one where, you used this analogy and you're able to, resolve something. So maybe the latest one, if you could share.
Sorry, Payal, can you repeat that again? I couldn't
Sure.
hear the last part.
Okay. So could you help us, share the latest place where, or the problem where you use this elevator pitch to resolve issue?
So I actually have stopped confronting people. I actually coach people how to confront people now. The last time I confronted anyone was actually my 10-year-old daughter, who was who was having a hard time following instructions. So and I do not have to say that I lost. Actually, I got confronted instead of confronting her. So I did not confront anyone, on the workplace in the recent times.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, Payal. Sandeep, if you could unmute yourself.
Thank you, Harshika. Hi, Vibhor. It was fantastic to hear your story and the lessons which you shared with us. One question which I have from my end is, in your years of experience, if you could share an anecdote or a story, since you are a storyteller, where you can share your experience of how you could bring in a positive change for a senior executive to make them prepared to adopt the agile way of working or the agile mindset. Perhaps that experience could help most of us here learn something from it. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the question, Sandeep. And I don't know how to actually put it. I don't want to promote my videos, but I have actually created a video on the same thing. Actually, it's a 3-part series. You can watch in detail how to actually go about reaching out executives and giving them the final pitch. But when I look at executives or any other leaders, I try to not give step-by-step instructions about how to go about deal with executives or executive leaders and higher management. I try to give them techniques about how they can go about and apply those techniques and do whatever they want to do. So when I look at the executives and the leaders, I look at them as parents. How a parent should behave when they are trying to raise their kids. When you look at a leader as a parent, you actually get answers to most of your questions. If you're trying to teach, your 8-year-old or your 6-year-old how to brush, what do you think? What kind of thoughts come to your mind, right? Sometimes you push them. Sometimes you just let it happen the way it is happening, and learn, help them face the consequences of not brushing the teeth, right? Sometimes you teach them, handhold them, and become a little strict and be like, okay, do the brush and I will stand here and see if you're doing it or not. Right? So it depends upon you which stage your leader is in at the moment. Now, in order to teach your leaders, actually, you have to become a leader of them and then behave as a parent and treat them as a child. Right? And think about ways about how you can actually approach them and, you know, by different ways of, you know, getting them on board and aligning them with whatever you're doing.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting. Thanks for the answer.
Thanks, Sandeep, for your question. Hari Krishnan, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Hi, Vibhor. Great to listen to you. It's an amazing, presentation that you had. My question, in one of the slides, you said if a team is in shoe stage, you will probably mentor them. If they are in a ha stage, probably it's better to counsel them. And if they are in re stage, you would mostly coach. Yeah, that's what I assumed from the slide. Now, how do you know that team is in these stages, and how do you know that sometimes this is a kind of fluctuating? From my experience, sometimes they do not stay in, say, re stage. Sometimes they go back to. Do they go back to shoe stage again?
Very good question, actually, and it's a the explanation is quite simple. So how do you know if they are in ha stage or re stage? Or so the benchmark that I use is that, you know, if they're doing the stuff that they need to do without you telling them what to do, then they are in ha stage.
Okay.
Right? Very few teams or very few people, very few companies are in re stage. I have not seen, actually, I have not worked with any team that was in re stage. We are still, you know, the work is in progress, but most of the teams, most of the time, they are in ha stage. So if in doubt, just assume that they are in ha stage. If they have been following Agile for some time, they're usually in the ha stage. They are actually following the events, diligently. They are coming and, doing stand-ups, and, they are punctual with time and everything. They are collaborating together. If all those things are happening, they are in ha stage. If not, they are in shoe stage.
Yeah, thank you. That's my experience as well. Majority of the teams that I've worked with is staying. And you made one statement at the beginning. Sometimes it is limiting beliefs of the leadership that it is okay to be in ha stage for most of the organizations. That is creating that limitation for them to move to a re stage as an organization. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hari Krishnan. Manoranjan, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, may I ask?
Yes, please.
Vibhor, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Vibhor, I have to ask some two questions. Actually, while discussing, you mentioned about that some companies or maybe some people, they have some notions and they have some presumptions. But you mentioned about they hate Agile. But why they hate Agile? Because you have a lot of exposure as an Agile coach and global exposure. So can you share with us why someone will hate? Because
Okay.
it's currently every organization is pushing.
Okay, so why would somebody hate something, right? If you again take the analogy of parents and kids, if you go to a kid, right, they have a candy. If you take the candy away from them, they'll hate you.
Okay.
Right? So in the same way, if you're introducing something new, you're introducing change, and that change is causing problem and causing them to go away from their comfort zone, they are going to hate you. There's no specific reason. I mean, they don't want to hate Agile. They're not Agile haters, but they just want to not go through the change, the pain that they have to go through, during this change. That's why they hate it. I can't hear you, sorry.
Manoranjan, you're still on mute.
Hello. What
Yes.
what other question was maybe you are lucky. Are you able to hear?
Yeah,
Yes, I can hear you.
So before you are lucky, you traveled UK. You joined some universities for computer science. So what extra you learned from us? I'm here in India. Some of my classmates also joined in Canada, like you. They are there. And what difference you found? Can you share? Because you are not using even what you have invested a lot of money for computer science, and you are also sharing like me, agile or project management. So
Yeah.
help us, because some of my junior colleagues, even some of many colleagues from initial days, they joined some universities. But I never, seriously, I never ask anyone.
So I tell you one simple thing, right? So at the time when when I was a student, when I went to UK and, pursued my studies, I had no interest in studies. I applied for IIT like 3 times. I couldn't make it. So I decided to go to UK. That's the simple reason. Right. So, I don't know what else to say, but you understand what I mean, right? I do, I do understand that I wasted a lot of money. Sorry, can't hear you.
Vibhor, I think let's take up other questions as well. Thanks, Manoranjan. Guru Charan, if you could unmute yourself and ask a question, please.
Sure. Hi, Vibhor.
Hello, Richard.
Hey, I had a question regarding the shoe hari, right? Mm-hmm. Well, as an agile coach, I do understand some of the teams are in the shoe stage. How do I make them realize and consciously take them to the ha or the re stage?
So this, again, let's make it simple, right? Mm-hmm. We do not make them realize anything, because they won't understand anything at that point. Okay. All we have to do is make them get into habits. Mm-hmm. All we have to do that, okay, you have to diligently attend all the stand-ups. Okay. All we have to do is ask them to, okay, you have to come and do refinement once in a week. You have to keep your backlog in a tip-top shape. You just have to create a discipline for the team. Once the team gets into that discipline, the habit of doing things, they automatically start to see the value out of those practices. You don't have to do anything, to be honest. That's the beauty of behind Agile and all that, those things. You don't have to do anything. You just have to make them follow those, the rules that are written for, those frameworks. Scrum is the best example, because I think Scrum is very easy to follow, and most of the people are already familiar with, the practices, the stand-ups, all those events. Later, you can go ahead and change.
Cool. Okay. Thanks. Makes sense. Thank you.
Gauri Shankar, if you could unmute yourself and ask the question, please.
Hey, hi, Vibhor. Thanks for a great session. I loved every bit of it. But so we talked, right, similar question to what Guru Charan had, but I want to know, how do you set the premise for the leadership? Because what I have seen, right, is when we go to get into coaching engagements, and people know that agile coaches are here to coach the teams. But a lot of times leaders don't think that they need to be coached or they need to be changed. And I feel like, how do we actually set up a coaching premise, right? How do we get that situation, or how do we reach that, understanding that we are able to talk to them in terms of, coaching point of view, or, that way. So I feel that that's, that's what I would like to hear from your experience.
All right. So the answer to your question is there in your question itself. Let's change the word premise to expectation, right? So when you first join a team or a company or, anything new, you set expectations. Now it depends upon you how you do that. but you need to set expectations with the higher management, with the executive leadership, and with the team about what is expected out of your role, right? And when you do that, that exercise will actually reveal what they have to do in return, and they will understand, right? So you don't actually have to do anything. Again, just ask them what they expect from you, and from out of those, expectations, they will get the activities that they have to do.
Okay, so it's kind of, you get their expectations, and then you say, if you want to go there, this is what probably we're looking to do in terms of activities or, practices, right? Okay, makes sense.
Thanks, Vibhor Chandel. Sandhya, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Hey, this was a great session, Vibhor. So thank you so much for presenting those examples. We can relate to it very, very well in our daily day-to-day routine. So one thing I struggle with many times is how to promote a culture of openness, wherein we are effectively doing a feed forward, and there is a constructive criticism being passed on. So how to just promote that culture wherein everyone is just open with each other, everyone trusts the intention of, as you quoted parents as an example. So just creating that culture of trust and openness at the same time. So what are your suggestions here?
Okay, now, because it is going to be 4:30, I'm almost half in my dream state, but I will try to explain whatever I understood with you, whatever you said. Again, let's look at the analogy of parents and kids, right? So what do you do as a parent to create a culture of trust in your household, right? To create a culture of, okay, you can't lie in this house. You tell your kids, okay, lying is a bad thing, you can't lie. How do you create a culture of trust in your household? Again, the first lesson that I showed in today's presentation, you have to be the leader that you want to have in the first place. I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm half asleep, sorry. So you have to behave in a way that you want your kids to behave in, right? So you have to, again, set up the expectations with the executive leadership team. You go to them and you ask them that, okay, in order for us to make this whole thing work, we need you to become champions, right? And then ask them to behave in a certain way. And then slowly, nothing happens, at the flick of a finger. You have to wait and see, how it's going, and then pivot, how it happens. So you have to go to the leadership team, ask them that, okay, this is the behavior that you're expecting the team to do. But in order for us to do that, as leaders, we have to do the same. We have to start, performing those behaviors. And then later on, we will see that. So be the leader, or, lead by example. So that's how I do it.
Thanks, Sandhya. Guys, we are already at the top of our hour, and I am sure Vibhor wants to go and catch up on some sleep. Thank you so much for the insightful session, Vibhor. I'm sure everybody had a blast. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate all the questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Sanjay, I don't know how do you manage the communication, but I will be more than happy to answer all the questions.
We don't manage the communication. It's an open and free flow. So
Vibhor will take up the questions offline from the rest of the people.